Miss Sahar, we are live. The floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, evening, and afternoon to everyone joining from around the world. I am Sahito and I am from Sindh, Pakistan. A literature and linguistics student, I am passionate about public speaking, leadership, and creative expression, and a fellow of Women Ascension Community Outreach. I am excited to be part of this session, continuing the journey through the ongoing mentorship series. Let me first tell you about Women Ascension. Women Ascension is a global initiative focused on empowering women, youth, and through education, leadership, and mentorship. Operating primarily in virtual space, it connects individuals worldwide, offering the opportunities for skill development, networking, and cross-cultural collaboration. The organization hosts webinars, workshops, and events to develop an inclusive community where engaging emerging leaders can grow and make an impact. Just a quick reminder for everyone to run the session smoothly. Keep your mic mute during the session. If you have any question, feel free to write them in the chat box or you can use the raise hand option. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your voice online is too small to matter? That a single post wouldn't create a real change? Well, today's session is all about breaking that myth. We are diving into digital feminism and a social media activism, where tweets, reels, and stories are powerful tools to combat gender based violence and spark global conversation. Because change doesn't always start in broad rooms, it starts with bold voice online, one post at a time. Let me introduce you to our speaker. It is privileged to welcome the passionate voice in the realm of advocacy and action. Ms. Eileen Taylor is a dynamic junior project coordinator and the co-director of Politics for Her Europe Hub. With a strong foundation of human rights, Eileen brings together research, communication, and project leadership to create a meaningful, measurable impact. She is not only skilled in strategy and execution, but also deeply committed to campaigning change through an intersectional feminist lens. Whether online or on the ground, her work speaks to the power of young voices, driving global conversation forward. Let's give her a warm virtual welcome as she shares her experiences and wisdom with us. So get ready to listen, learn, and be inspired. Miss Eileen Taylor, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for your kind words and your introduction. So yes, my name is Eileen Taylor, and I'm happy to present my presentation today. Just to check, can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, please.
perfect.
Yes, please.
So as mentioned in the introduction, I just wanted to give a brief introduction about what Politics for Her is, since I will be using our examples from our work that I do as co-director. So we are an international NGO with an intersectional digital feminist platform led by a global movement of young women. We advocate for inclusive participation of young women and girls in politics. And where I work at the European Hub, we have created to advocate for women's rights and active participation in politics around Europe. We are composed of 27 members, and we have members from over 17 different nationalities. So, to start off, to start off my conversation about digital feminism, I want to remark on the powerful evolution in feminist movement that harnesses technology for social change. So, if we give digital feminism a very basic definition, it is the use of digital tools and platforms to advocate for women's rights, challenge gender equalities, and promote feminist ideas. And this intersection of feminist activism and digital technologies, it's not just about moving traditional activism online. It's about reimagining how we can advocate for gender equality and in an interconnected world. So let's break down some of the core elements of digital feminism. Through the use of, you use digital tools, so social media, blogs, podcasts, online communities that create spaces for feminist discourse. It's accessible and it gives us the ability to reach broader audiences and connect activists across geographical boundaries. And it also fosters democratic participation because digital spaces allow more voices to join the conversation and share their experiences. And later on in my presentation, I will show you how, through some of our examples, how we have managed to do so. There has been an evolution of feminist activism in the digital age, and it has been remarkable. Starting in the 1990s to the 2000s, early online feminist forums and websites were created the first digital feminist communities. In the 2010s, we had social media platforms that enabled rapid mobilization and global campaigns. And in the present day, we have integration of multimedia tools, the use of viral hashtags to feminist podcasts and virtual organizing. And then, of course, there's the future, which is you, that will bring us forward. So now that we've understood the foundations, let's explore how digital activism has transformed feminist movements globally. So, digital activism has revolutionized how feminist movements organize, communicate, and create change. But why have they become so powerful? Because they are cost effective. Unlike traditional media campaigns, digital activism requires minimal financial resources. It's speedy. Messages can spread globally within hours, allowing rapid response to events that occur. It's inclusive. Digital spaces enable participation from diverse groups and perspectives. And I think the most powerful example is the Me Too movement, which exemplifies the transformative power of digital feminist activism. The Me Too movement was founded in 2006 by survivor and activist Tarana Burke, shown in the illustration on the slide. And her movement initially focused on providing resources and support for survivors of sexual violence, building a grassroots community of advocates. And when the #MeToo hashtag went viral in 2017, it demonstrated the incredible reach of digital activism. Within just 6 months, what began as local advocacy transformed into global movement, reaching millions of survivors worldwide, reaching over 85 countries. Today, the movement exemplifies intersectional digital feminism in action, serving diverse communities, including young people, LGBTQ+ individuals, people with disabilities, Black women and girls, and communities of color. Beyond providing support for individual healing journeys, the movement works to create systemic change by demanding accountability and implementing long-term strategies to address sexual violence. So, social media platforms have become crucial for feminist discourse because they amplify voices traditionally excluded from mainstream media. They create communities of support and solidarity and enable real-time organization of protests and campaigns. And I think a good example of this at Politics for Her was our campaign that we ran a few months ago called the End Gender Apartheid in Afghanistan campaign, which was a collaborative effort between Politics for Her Europe and an Italian NGO founded by the diaspora of Afghanistani women who had escaped Afghanistan after the takeover of the Taliban in 2021. And through our efforts, we were able to achieve significant impact through our digital activism. Our initiative and petition gathered over 1,000 signatures, and we built a strong social media presence with over 500 Instagram followers. Our content consistently reached thousands, with posts and reels averaging over 50 likes and 1,000 views. Most importantly, we've created a platform for Afghanistani women to share their stories, breaking the silence surrounding their experiences. Through our network of over 30 dedicated ambassadors, we've expanded our reach through social media campaigns and website articles, advancing our mission to recognize gender apartheid as a crime against humanity and advocate for international action. So, while these tools are powerful, we must also address the significant challenges that comes along with digital activism and digital feminism. So, as discussed, while digital feminism has created unprecedented opportunities for activism, it's crucial to understand its limitations and challenges. According to a Politics for Her Europe policy report called Breaking the Silence, Cyber Violence Against Women in Europe, published in March of 2025, cyber violence against women represents a serious form of gender-based violence perpetrated through digital means. While digital spaces have expanded opportunities for free speech and activism, they also mirror and amplify existing societal inequalities. The impacts are many of cyber violence. At a psychological level, victims experience stress disorders, depression, and anxiety that can persist long after the initial incidents. There's PTSD symptoms from image-based abuse, including flashbacks, hypervigilance, and emotional distress. And there are lasting impacts on self-esteem and personal relationships. And at a social and economic level, victims withdraw from public discourse and reduce online participation in professional networks. They may lose their jobs and reduce their productivity due to emotional distress and time spent dealing with the harassment itself. And maybe their career could be limited, and to opportunity to advance can also be impacted due to self-censorship and decreased visibility of their on the online space. And I think there are some statistics that really highlight the extent to which cyber violence is pervasive for women. So, as you can see on the slide, according to UNESCO, over 73% of women journalists face online violence every day. And according to the European Institute for Gender Equality, over 50% of young women avoid online discussions due to harassment. But there are also digital divides that pose challenges to the impact of digital feminism. In terms of access, we must remember that 41% of the global population lacks regular internet access. There are economic barriers that limit women's participation, and technology literacy gaps creates inequalities. And so when we're looking at online safety, we must really take into account the rise in targeted harassment of feminist activists, organized opposition through anti-feminist campaigns, and the psychological toll that this work can have on activists. After all, there are different forms of online harassment that can happen. The first is direct harassment and intimidation. It could be persistent trolling and targeted personal attacks designed to silence voices, coordinated campaigns aimed at undermining feminist initiatives and spreading misinformation, and systematic harassment through multiple accounts and platforms. But there are also platform-related structural issues. Inconsistent and often ineffective content moderation practices, algorithmic bias that can amplify harassment while suppressing feminist content, fragmented social policies that fail, safety policies that fail to address intersectional experience of online abuse, and limited transparency in enforcement of community guidelines. And I think one of the main ways we can see this is a recent change in Meta's policies, which has led to an unsettling shift in acceptable language. For example, it allows users to refer to transgender and non-binary people as it. It removes policies that prohibit referring to women as household items or property. And it allows claims of mental illness and abnormality based on gender or sexual orientation, citing political or religious discourse about the LGBTQ+ community. So after looking at these risks that feminists face in the online sphere, at Politics for Her Europe and in our policy report, we have identified the following critical interventions and measures that must be implemented to create safer digital spaces. So there must be technology platform accountability and infrastructure. These platforms should implement comprehensive, legally binding guidelines for systematic content monitoring and removal of harmful material. They must establish specialized teams of trained moderators with experience in gender-based violence for thorough abuse report investigation. They must develop and implement robust double verification systems with enhanced security protocols to effectively prevent anonymous harassment. Legal frameworks and protections also need to be strengthened. Framework should establish comprehensive freestanding image copyright laws specifically designed to protect private content and prevent its unauthorized distribution. Framework should implement strict legislation to criminalize the development, distribution, and use of deepfake tools and manipulated content. And it must modernize and expand existing hate speech legislation to explicitly address and combat online sexist harassment and gender-based abuse. There also needs to be an enhancement of enforcement mechanisms. Clear legal frameworks need to be developed, establishing platform liability for AI-generated defamatory content and harmful algorithmic amplification. Mechanisms need to be designed and implemented to become user-friendly and transparent reporting mechanisms with clear timelines for response. And they must ensure that cases receive appropriate priority and resources within frameworks and enforcement systems. But also at a civil society level, there needs to be comprehensive engagement. Civil society should establish and provide sustained funding for research networks dedicating to studying the intersection of AI development and cyber violence. Create meaningful opportunity for youth involvement in digital safety advocacy and policy development, and develop and implement comprehensive educational programs focusing on digital rights, online safety, and recognition of potential warning signs. These recommendations form a comprehensive approach to making digital spaces safer for feminist activism while protecting vulnerable users from harassment and abuse. Understanding these challenges helps us develop more resilient and inclusive approaches to digital feminism, which brings us to our next topic, intersectionality. So in our line of work, Politics for Her Europe, intersectionality is crucial to understanding how different forms of oppression and privilege intersect in digital spaces. And as a reminder, intersectionality, as a definition, is a framework for understanding how various social identities such as race, gender, class, sexuality, and disability intersect and overlap to create unique modes of discrimination and privilege. So how does intersectionality shape digital feminist activism? It accounts for multiple identities, how race, class, sexuality, disability, and gender create unique experiences online. It allows for digital representation of diverse voices in our spaces. And it gives diverse voices accessibility on our platform and an understanding of how different groups access and use digital tools differently. So digital platforms can both help and hinder intersectional feminism. The aim is to create spaces for underrepresented groups to share their experiences, to build coalitions across different feminist movements, and to challenge dominant narratives within mainstream feminism. But in practice, how can we ensure that we are practicing intersectional digital feminism? We need to actively listen and amplify diverse voices, acknowledge our privileges and biases online, and support initiatives led by marginalized communities. And by understanding intersectionality, it helps us create more inclusive digital feminist movements. But we must also consider how this connects to on-the-ground activism. So while digital activism has transformed feminist movements, its true power lies in connection with on-the-ground organizing. So we must integrate digital and physical activism. It's crucial that we do so because digital platforms can amplify local movements and grassroots initiatives. Physical activism provides tangible community connections and support, and a combined strategy reaches both online and offline communities. And to create lasting change, it requires a thoughtful integration of those two. To use digital tools to coordinate local actions and protests, to document grassroots work through digital storytelling, and build networks that survive platform changes or digital disruptions, as mentioned before. And as we turn to the future, we must understand how to bridge the bridge between digital and physical activism and how it becomes increasingly important. And a concrete example I can give at Politics for Her was that through the online space, um, in 2023, we collaborated with a grassroots organization in Morocco following earthquake that occurred, and through crowdfunding campaign, we were able to produce and send 1,000 toolkits of menstrual health and sanitary pads to these communities in Morocco. And I feel this is a very powerful example of what can happen when at a European NGO, we are able to, on the digital space, raise the voices of those who struggle in a moment of 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 need, and we can provide them with tangible results and help and create solidarity between different groups across the world. So, as we conclude our discussion and my presentation, we need to look at how digital feminism continues to evolve and shape the future of gender equality activism. We need to build collective power because the future of digital feminism lies in strengthening our collective resilience. We need to develop sustainable digital communities that withstand platform changes, create decentralized networks to reduce dependency on corporate platforms, and establish cross-generational knowledge sharing and mentorship. And as you can see on our slide, as a small example, our Politics for Her Europe Hub, we recently in May organized a workshop called The Reimagining Resistance Through Online Feminist Survival, where a group of 20, 30 activists built a network and a system of sisterhood and support. And we explored powerful tactics learned from those who had resisted before us and imagined the future of a digital feminist resistance. So, in terms of advancing gender equality, digital platforms are a great way to offer new opportunities for advancing feminist goals. We can leverage emerging technologies for feminist advocacy. We can create innovative tools for documenting and addressing gender-based discrimination, and build global solidarity networks for rapid response to gender issues. But as we move forward, there are always key challenges ahead because we must ensure that digital security and privacy for feminist activists is ensured. We need to combat increasingly sophisticated forms of online harassment, as I have developed in the presentation before. And we must maintain our spaces as inclusive as possible as technology evolves and policies laid down by social media platforms are ever changing. So I suppose my main question that I pose to myself when thinking about the role of digital feminism and how to bring about change is what role do, and we can ask ourselves this together, is what role do you see yourself playing in the future of digital feminism? And as I think about what I can do, I think about the, the wise words of Audre Lorde that reminds us that your silence will not protect you. The future of digital feminism depends on our ability to speak up, to adapt, innovate, and maintain solidarity across digital spaces while staying true to core feminist principles. Through our collective efforts, online and offline, we're building, we must ensure that we're building a more inclusive and just digital world. As we've explored today, the challenges are real, from cyber violence to digital divides, but so is our resilience and determination. The future of digital feminism lies in our ability to harness technology while protecting each other, amplify marginalized voices, and create lasting change through both digital and grassroots activism. Together, we can transform these digital spaces into powerful tools for gender justice and social change. So I will leave the floor in a minute to any questions, and I will share my presentation slides with you if that is you would like to access them. And if you would like to remain in touch or follow the work that we do at Politics for Her, these are our social handles. And if you would like to reach out, I am a mentor at Women's Ascension, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or through my email. So I leave the floor to your questions.
Okay, so to keep the conversation flowing, I would like to ask some questions related to the topic. Just like, what is the difference between performative feminism and real digital feminism? Miss Eileen, can you answer?
Yes, of course. So for me, performative feminism is in the online world, for example, for me, it is, putting cliche sort of quotes, for example, made by rich white women who have no real true experience of harms that women face in everyday life. And I think being an effective digital way of addressing societal issues that are intersectional and often very deeply embedded in society, you have to engage and listen to the voices of those who are truly marginalized. And the way that I approach this as an activist and as co-director of Politics for Her Europe is that when I look at who I'm following on my social media, which voices am I hearing? As a white woman, I sit down and I listen. And for example, during the End Gender Apartheid campaign, I was struck by the importance of listening to the voices of the women living under gender apartheid in Afghanistan. We had access to their stories through WhatsApp, and they were telling us, please, please share our stories. Tell the world what is happening to us. And that is what we did. Because they felt ignored, they felt marginalized, they felt that the world had moved on and that they were not listened to. And I felt that the least I could do was tell the world what was happening and um and highlight their plight and their need for help and for global action against their broad societal discrimination. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes. So, Miss Eileen, I'm a student. So, being a student, how can I use the feminism in just like schools or colleges or universities or any environment or place with few restrictions? They have their own rules and norms.
Yes, of course. So, as a student, one of the best ways I would think it of is you have access to library um, and online resources through your university and your studies, and to open up the resources that you are reading, not to stick to the main text, to go outside of the norm, to look at um, to look at the voices of the marginalized and incorporate those into your study and into your work and to listen and amplify them. I think for me that's how I started out as as a young student in my activism. And it evolves over time, and even those small ways, it's a way of resisting. Um, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. So, why do some people support the feminism post online but they act completely different offline?
Um, it really depends on the person, I suppose. Um, I think it's easier perhaps to like a post, and maybe your profile is more anonymous, and it takes less effort to support a cause online than it does offline, I would say. And I think the way that I try and get people offline to engage with what they are seeing online is to have conversations with them and understand why they're hesitant to speak up or to not support causes that they are liking on posts and etc. And because at the end of the day, when you're trying to um, cause cultural change, it doesn't happen overnight, and you need to have these small conversations with people and understand their motivations or their fears or their hesitations and see about, which is why I think having workshops like the one organized that I was talking about earlier is about um, developing different strategies to um, make sure that you feel safe um, and free from harassment, and that you have solidarity and the support of different people in the outside world, not just the online world.
Okay, so how do you think online feminism help people talk more openly about gender-based violence, especially in the places where it's hard to speak up?
Um, I think um, that's a good question. I think that online feminist spaces offer activists the anonymity to 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 not only amplify their voices, but when they're facing direct violence and persecution. I'm thinking, for example, of women in Iran and Afghanistan who face repression for speaking up. And social media is a powerful tool to be used to not only instrumentalize your own power and your voice and to speak up against injustice, but also to tell the world about what you're going through and to get and gain solidarity from other networks. And the online space can be a real platform of solidarity and feminist networks that are transnational and also multi-generational. But I also understand that it, you know, I also think that it's very important that even if you do feel that you're threatened, that um, you share. I think of the bravery of the women in Afghanistan who shared their stories with us in our campaigns on WhatsApp and other apps, who sent us videos when there are new decrees passing every day that prohibits them from singing in public and protesting. And they said, no, you must show this to the world because we are not passive. We are actively resisting. And you have the tools to shine a light on what we're doing and to remind the world of what we're going through. And I think that is, for me, it's like an example of how digital feminism must have a blend of grassroots and digital together.
Okay, so what are some smart ways to use the social media to spread the awareness about gender-based violence while also keeping the people safe, like survivors or activists?
So one of the main ways that we do this is to anonymize the identities of the survivors, because um, their safety is the most important aspect of this. It would not be ethical of us as feminist activists to put their names and to put their names out there without thinking about their safety concerns, whether it be that their abuser finds them or they get subjected to more online harassment and cyber violence. So keeping them anonymous is one of the main ways. But also, I think it's about listening to their ideas of what they would like to spread and what they would like to share on social media. Because many victims feel silenced or they feel shame. And so it's about creating spaces where you remove the stigma and you undo the shame that they have suffered and are going through by being victims of gender-based violence. And I think that those are the most important strategies. And so we often a good strategy is to conduct interviews if they feel like it. Obviously, on a video we would blur their identity, their face, and they would speak or change their voice with autotune and things like that. So yeah, maintaining anonymity and protecting their identity is one of the most important tools.
Okay, so Miss Eileen, many people I have seen They face online bully or hate. When they talk about gender rights, what advice would you give to stay strong and safe?
First of all, is I feel sorry that this is the world that we live in, and that many of us experience this type of violence and harassment for expressing our views and for equality and justice. I think the most important thing is to look after yourself. And what really struck me in the workshop that we were talking to, we were listening to different voices, and some people were saying that they feel that, you know, often you feel that you always have to speak up. And some people, you may be in the mental space where you can't speak up, or in the safety, in the status of safety where you can speak up. But when you can't, you should not feel guilty or shame, or you shouldn't feel shamed into speaking up. You should think, preserve your own safety and your own mental health. Because at the end of the day, unless you can look after yourself, how can you advocate and how can you speak up for the rights of others? So it's a balancing act, and it's also learning about what works for you and what doesn't. So there are different strategies that I take, for example, when I'm feeling particularly fragile, or I'm a survivor of gender-based violence myself, and sometimes I feel particularly vulnerable, or based on certain comments that are made about me online or the work that we do, and sometimes I just turn off those platforms and I switch off from social media and I don't engage with the news, so that I can feel strong and build resilience within myself to then continue my work. So, my advice is to stay resilient. And it's okay to have moments of, to take time to look after yourself and protect yourself. In fact, you should not feel any shame or guilt because of it. It'll only make you a stronger advocate in the long run.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, there's a question that are there any free tools or websites that help you track down how many people your campaign reaches, or how do they react to it?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, ma'am. So, ma'am, there's a question that are there any free tools or websites that help you track down like how many people your campaign reach or how they react to it?
As far as I'm aware, the best tools to calculate metrics are on social media platforms themselves. If you go on in the web the tool on Instagram, for example, it will tell you how many accounts you are reaching at the top. And also you have the engagement metrics. And in terms of it, if you're looking at a campaign, for example, you can look at how many people are responding to your emails, to your messages, um, to your question, to sign a petition, how many signatures you have. Um, and the best way to build engagement, since we started off from 0 followers for this campaign on end gender apartheid in Afghanistan, we talked to those around us in our network and we encouraged them to follow us. And then over time, we built relationship with our followers, and we thank them for every endorsement and every help and every share and everything that they did to help spread our message. And you know, sometimes it depends on what you can consider a success of a social media campaign. Do you consider it a success if you reach millions and millions of views, or do you see it as a success when you have created an online space that actively um, spreads information and listens to those who need help and whose voices have been silenced, and you amplify their message to the world? And for me, I think that to me, those are perhaps less tangible results, but to me, that's why I'm a digital activist.
Okay, Miss Khushi, you can ask if you have any other question. Okay, so Miss Salva is asking, what is your message to those who misunderstood feminism by thinking it means women can do anything they want, even if it's wrong, and instead call it a right?
Um, that is a difficult question. I think, um, like I said, I think on a broader level, you can, through using your social media and your social media platforms or website and blog, you can talk about general misconceptions about what feminism is and the myths and the how feminism is misconstrued. But on a personal level, I think that's the most effective way, to be honest. Um, because you can't change someone's mind through a post. One post is not going to change a person's mind. Um, and so you need to have if you know people in your personal life who have these beliefs, you need to sit down with them. And even though it may be difficult, you can do this in a non-confrontational way, but you need to discuss why they feel that they have a right to do certain things and why others may not. And um, and talk about what feminism means to you and why you think that that is the wrong approach that they are taking.
Okay, Ms. Eileen, Kenny is asking that what strategies can be implemented to combat the digital violence effectively?
As I was discussing before, I think there are different ways that we need to combat cyber violence. First of all, we need to create safe networks for activists where they can turn to in times of need. Because unfortunately, you need a community net to help you. You cannot do it alone. And the violence, as I have established in my talk, is widespread and aggressive and pervasive. But also, we really need to advocate for better moderation policies, for strict hate speech laws on social media platforms and on the wider level in society as well. Why are certain types of misogynist violence allowed on social media? Why do people feel entitled to do that? It's because they have the freedom to do so. Platforms need to step in and take accountability for what is being done on their platforms. But also, there needs to be strong enforcement mechanisms by the police and legal system to punish people for their violence that they perpetrate through an anonymous account on their social media platform. They feel entitled to talk about women or to perpetuate violence and give rape threats or other threats of violence. These things need to be the law is behind on this. It needs to evolve with the times and involve these types of harms and violence into definitions of what is gender-based violence. And there needs to be accountability for these perpetrators.
Okay, so Ms. Eileen, how can we check that if our social media campaign is really making a difference in both online and real life? Or are there any tool that can help?
On the online level, I would say it depends. To me, a successful online campaign is when you make a large network of people from all over the world for one cause, and you have engagement that is consistent and you're all driving towards one goal. But then also at a grassroots level, you have, say we're talking about gender-based violence. You have survivors come and tell you that what you're doing is helping them, or that you're providing them a safe space where they can talk about the experiences that they have gone through, or the shame that they feel that society has made them feel, or that we are combating norms about certain gendered norms about what violence is and what it means to be a survivor, for example. And I think those personal testimonies to me is what keeps me going. Because if I know that what I'm doing is helping just one person or two people, for me, that's already a victory for me. Because um, as a survivor myself, I say this again, I I have gone through many experiences, not all, but to know that there are people on my side is um, it would have provided me with so much comfort and support. So if I know that we can do that with a campaign and by listening um, to them and making them feel seen and heard and understood, I think that's a success in itself.
Okay, so we have another question from our YouTube live. Ms. Sheila is asking, how does technology facilitate gender-based violence against women and girls?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, Ms. Sheila is asking that how does technology facilitate gender-based violence against women and girls?
Right. So I think the way that technology in modern day facilitates gender-based violence is it its algorithms push um, push gen push misogynistic language and um, uh, online or videos or images um, of of women and being hurt or being raped or being abused. And it suppresses feminist and other forms of content that goes against these traditional norms. Um, and it's not just the algorithm, it's that moderators fail to respond when you have in a recent case, for example, um, for example, you had on TikTok, you had for, I think it was for a few hours, you had a video of teenage boys raping a young teenage girl herself, and it was left online, and it garnered millions of views, and there was no moderation. And when you talk to the moderators afterwards, they said that they couldn't spot it and they could not stop. There were no mechanisms through which they could halt that type of unspeakable perpetration of violence. And so it's really like systematic failures at AI at company level, and algorithms that reward certain types of misogynistic and sexist content.
Okay, so Ms. Diana Onglia is asking that do you know some case studies where digital feminism activism led to tangible change?
I think for me, the most powerful example is the one I mentioned earlier, is the Me Too case study, because I remember when that came out, I was a young university student, and I remember the conversations I had, not in the online world, but in the actual offline world, in the real world, with because I also shared my Me Too. And I remember having conversations with men and young boys of my age, and also with older men, lecturers, and my father, about what it is like to be a woman and experience forms of gender-based violence. And it was eye-opening for them. And I think it was transformative in a certain way. I know there are steady reversals at the moment with the rise of the manosphere and influencers like Andrew Tate and Jordan, what's his name, Peterson, that encourage sexual violence and violence against women as a way to control women. But for me, in that period, it was really transformative because it started a conversation about the systemic ways in which women experience violence and what we have to put up with, or were expected to put up with. And it was really eye-opening for me to listen to these men being shocked by those experiences that we were going through. And it made them reflect on their own behavior and how they should interfere, and how they should talk with their own friends in so-called locker room chat, for example, when you're talking about other women, or and I think for me that was very powerful. It was a very powerful time, and I know that things are reversing. But I generally do think that having constructive dialogue that is non-confrontational, but you level with them, and you show them your world and how it feels like for you, it can really, really change the way social attitudes against pervasive forms of violence.
Yes, so we have two more questions from YouTube Live. Lingu is asking that how can digital feminism amplify the voice of marginalized women, such as women of color or women with disabilities?
So I think, first of all, one of the main ways that you amplify the voices is when you're building a campaign or a feminist organization, is who are you hiring? So at Politics for Her Europe, we have a diverse range of activists. We come from different countries. We are of different ethnicities, of different race, of different sexualities. And so it's almost like within ourselves, we are checking our own privileges and biases and making sure that we are looking out for the voices that we know are missing from general stories that are happening across the world, and that women of different identities and intersecting identities go through every day. But then also at a content level, I think, for example, at Politics for Her Europe, during the 16 days of activism, which it starts on the 25th of November on the elimination of gender on violence against women, which is a 16-day campaign, we last year we approached it from an intersectional way, and we thought, how are we going to activate a 16-day campaign to fight gender-based violence? And we said we need to talk to different voices within our communities. So, for example, in December, there's a day on Disability Day. And so we invited an important influencer who has a disability herself to talk about what disabled women and how they experience gender-based violence. And it was illuminating, and it really exposed the different harms that they go through and how they often feel ignored from the conversation. We also had a look at what women who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community went through. And also in general, when we are looking at posts, making our content, um, we are informed by our own experiences. So, for example, we had a member in our group who has endometriosis, and as a Black woman received substandard care because her pain was not taken seriously for many years. And so we made a post about that, and we looked at the statistics, and we highlighted her story, but we also showed that it was a pervasive problem across society about Black women and how their pain is often ignored and underestimated, or they're told to just go with it. And so I think those are the ways that you highlight it. You have to, first of all, surround yourself in a diversity, but also listen out for stories and speak to different people. You cannot stay within your own bubble.
Okay, so Miss Eileen, there is another interesting question. Miss Elisali is asking that in our African cultures, women are viewed as acquired objects just because men pay bride a price. So you find that many women fall victims of gender-based violence. What can we do to teach these men that we are equal humans like them? Should our parents stop asking for their bride's price?
Um, yeah, It's a difficult question. I mean, not a difficult question. It's a complex question because you need to obviously one wants to have respect for culture, but you also have to undo these norms and cultural norms that are harmful to women. And I think this is the one thing I always go back to is you need to talk to leaders within your community and in your culture and talk to them about why they think that this is acceptable. And through conversation, you need to engage with that and try and question it. And because otherwise change will never happen. And I'm not blaming the brides who go through this, by the way. I'm completely sympathetic to their experience and but it's about finding the right language in your own way to show men that you are equal and that you are not property. You are a human being and you deserve full respect and you don't deserve to be subjected to violence. No one does. Neither do they. And it's also about challenging gender norms that are assigned, the traditional roles that are assigned to men and women. Men about being breadwinners and the so-called man of the household, and women that are submissive and have to follow the word of their husband. And that takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight. But it's about trying to win over first, perhaps your father, if you're about to get married, that you expect a certain type of respect, but also with your husband, but yeah, I know it's not that easy to do, but it's a very good question, and I think I'm also interested to hear what you have to say since I'm not African and I don't want to speak for the African experience.
Okay, so Miss Alice, if you want to talk about this, you can open your mic. Or
Yes.
we will move to another question.
If someone has an answer, I'd be happy to listen to them, but if not, I can move on.
Okay.
Hi, Ellen. It's Alice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. I've understood what you have said. Yeah, so yeah, you can move on because yeah, I know it's very complex when it comes to culture because you've got these leaders who've got what they are saying. This is how it's supposed to be done, but now at the same time, it will bring unfairness to the bride as these men think they own you just because they have paid the bride price. Now they think they own you. If they say jump, you ask how high. If they say do this, you gotta do it just because they paid something to your parents. So yeah, I don't know how we can go about that, but yeah, they just need to treat us as equal human beings.
Absolutely. And thank you for your answer.
Okay, so Ms. Sheila is asking, is there a difference between a cyberbullying and cyber violence?
Cyberbullying is a type of cyber violence. It falls under the definition because cyber violence is the umbrella term, and then cyberbullying is a type of cyber violence.
Okay, so Yashnikam is asking, which social media platform do you think are most effective for feminist activism?
At the moment, from my own personal experience, I would say Instagram and TikTok. Because Instagram, I feel is more open for, written word, creating those um, like text-based posts that can inform someone and or put a powerful quote of someone's story or their experience. And TikTok, if you use a very popular sound or you create a very inventive and creative video, it can gain so much traction and you can spread a very powerful message. And I find that um, that often certain types of online feminist campaigns will get thousands and thousands and thousands of views on TikTok. Especially if you're looking at the a younger demographic.
Okay, so Patila is asking how can we integrate young men and adolescent boys to be part of the advocacy and accountability initiative to digital activism and feminism?
Yes, that's a great answer and something we really care about. I think it's crucial because we can only go so far if if men do not want to involve themselves in gender equality and combating gender-based violence. Because at the end of the day, these gender norms also hurt them, and men also experience gender-based violence. Yes, at lesser rates, of course, but they do also experience it. Um, and I think it starts with education, to be honest, because I think when I think back on my schooling, I think that certain conversations about what a woman was and what a man was and what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior were conversations that were not had. And I think that those things should be challenged. Why is this like that? Why are the certain things presented as they are and they cannot be changed? So you really need to start from, nursery school or from when they're small children. Why are men given different toys than women? And why is it not acceptable for them to play with dolls or to use so-called girls or feminine toys? It starts with these type of things that escalate and go on and consider and separate men and women into different categories and different types of the expected behavior. And if you're not speaking with the men are not taught that certain behaviors and certain norms are harmful to women, they won't know. And it's also about, and if they are exposed to this type of education already at school, if then they go on social media and they see these manosphere influencers and that the algorithm serves up to young boys and men, they will have a lot more digital literacy to critique this type of message about a man's role over a woman, that he should dominate and he should use violence as a tool of power. And so I think it's crucial that we start young, and also that for both women, girls and boys, and non-binary identities, we discuss consent and other crucial elements that make up what is acceptable behavior in a relationship and what is not acceptable. Because we must remember that at the end of the day, gender-based violence happens is more likely to happen by someone you know than a unknown person on the street. And so for me, I think the most powerful tool that we have is to talk to the men in our lives. I do that. I have done that many times, and sometimes they don't listen. But you have to continue going because they eventually will develop sensibilities and go, why is it like this? Or why am I expected to behave like this? Or why does this happen? And these reflections, and if you talk through it with them, they start to go, oh, I see. This is a societal problem that I am part of. And now I can identify it. And now I need to learn how to actively fight these types of expected behavior and unlearn these harmful stereotypes and unharmful behaviors. And 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 so I think that is how it happens. It's a long process, but I think it starts with changing culture, changing education, and having personal, difficult conversations um, with the boys and men in your lives.
So it reminds me about that Netflix series, the most hype between teenagers nowadays, adolescents, that is
Yes.
all about digital feminism. Yes. So let's move towards the next question. Yash Nigam is asking, what role can men play in supporting digital feminism without overshadowing women's voice?
I think because there are feminist men activists, and I think one of the most powerful things they can do is, first of all, to share the work that is being done by the feminists, female feminist activists, and amplify their voices and share them and talk to them and listen, because you need to be an active listener, and then you can amplify their experiences and their stories. But also, they know how to talk to other men because, you know, there are certain interactions that happen in, I don't know, in sports or in the locker rooms, or when they're having a drink together at a bar, or, you know, many other male activities or so-called traditional male activities. And, you know, if a friend starts talking disrespectfully about a woman or her body, it's up to them to speak up against this type of harmful language. And they know they can do it in a way that seems less confrontational than if a woman was defending herself. And it also takes away some of the pressure that women have to stand up for themselves. So it's a form of solidarity, really. But it's also crucial in transforming the culture that I'm talking about. This is a running occurrence for me in tackling this pervasive problem, is changing societal norms and changing culture. And so I think men are really really need the support of men. And you find them. They are out there. So and yeah.
Okay, so Miss Onglia is raising her hands. She wants to ask something.
Thank you, Sahar. Good afternoon. I don't want to add something, but I want to bring my contribution about the question talking about the bride price in Africa. So what I want to say is that we cannot cancel the bride price. That this is something that is not really possible. But what we can think is reevaluate the bride price. Why? Before, this is how the bride price was looking in Cameroon context. This was the two families together in the same place, changing like a simple bottle of wine with a small symbolic things. And then you bring your daughter and you share with the other family, okay? Actually, the bride price is something like we can say in many African society is reinforced a male domination and serve to uphold certain family hierarchy and traditional roots inequality. Okay. Some family think that this is a big proud to have a man to come and give a bride price. And actually, bride price here in Cameroon is something that bring certain family out of poverty, or not a complete poverty, but ameliorates a life condition. This is why life condition. So say that someone can come and counsel the bride price with our parent education now is something that's really impossible, because I remember in the last session talking about feminism and activism when I had with some important women. She told me that they tried it 2 years ago, okay, to remove the actual bride price in Cameroon function. What it was not work. They tried to collect signature to cancel that, but not possible. Why? Because there are men. Most of the law that are signed here is coming from men, and men cannot say no for his power. So we need to educate our communities about the true meaning and impact of the bride price. So families should be taught how to genuinely value their daughters, not as a commodities, but as an individual with right and potential. Because now you have some family where the parents say, if my daughter have a master's, okay, it means that my daughter deserves like 5 million francs on the bride price. She deserves like 10 pork and 20 banana plantain trees and 3 cars. So how can you think that some families can say, or some people in Cameroon can counsel it? We must also open people's eyes to how the bad price can turn marriage into transaction, more of a business deal than a union based on love, respect, and partnership. So we just have to do that work, because it's not easy. It's not easy in our context now to see some family that struggle in their life and say, okay, our daughter succeeds. Because in some countries in Africa, mostly in Cameroon context, woman that gets married is a success. Is a success, okay? Is a proud of family. So when they sit together, they talk about how many their daughter costs. What is something unbelievable? And when the man get that, he said, this is my product. I know I will know I have to do what I want with my product. So when they goes in the bad marriage, they become a victim of violence. Because they say, okay, I pay 3 million for you, so you belonging to me. I am free to do what I want to do. Okay, even possess your thinking, everything. So we need to come back from the basis of the bride price for what our elders did, our ancestors. Okay, we need to bring it, if it's possible, to bring it on the table again, to say, okay, before, when your grandparent or other get married, they just change some bottle and drink together, and then our parents get an amazing marriage and a happy marriage. So this is my contribution.
Thank you so much. It's a very interesting perspective and useful local perspective also. And I think you're completely right. And yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, so I just wanted to share, just like here, unlike in many African cultures where the groom's family give a bride price, in Pakistan it is the bride's family who provides a dowry or gifts known as bari to the groom's or his family. So let's move to another question. Why do some people still misunderstand or resist feminism, especially the online platforms on, and how can we respond to that constructivist?
I feel that it's because in certain aspects in mainstream culture, there is a misrepresentation of what feminism is. And I think it's our role, I see it as my role in society to address these myths and these misunderstandings about what feminism is. Because often I hear comments like, well, feminism is about girl power and women dominating the world. And I went, no, that's not feminism, that's misandry. And it's about actively educating and challenging these misunderstandings, and perhaps also I think there's also within female populations, I think often there is, unfortunately, the patriarchy has created competition between women. And so they feel that if they participate in feminism, they feel that they lose their status. If they are privileged in any way, if they're rich, they're white, they're able-bodied, they are straight, they are, there are many intersections of privilege. And I think that it's about understanding that being a feminist is about your own rights, but also the rights of others, and that does not take away your rights. And I think that is definitely a problem. And but there's also a problem on the other hand, which we have experienced in Politics for Her, is that when you try to do good and you try and activate a campaign to bring about change, is that you're met with people who expect perfectionism, or they say that we are trivializing a topic, or that we're being white saviors without considering or incorporating diverse voices in our campaigns, without really understanding our work and how we get there. And there's this almost this culture within different feminist movements to attack one another for not doing the right thing or not doing it in the right way. And that is also really harmful to our cause and gender equality and fighting gender based violence. And I think it's ultimately about finding ways that you can work together and showing each other that people may have different ways of approaching feminism, but that the root cause is the same.
Okay, so let's end this. Thank you so much, Miss Eileen Taylor, for such a powerful and thought-provoking session.
Thank
You
you.
remind us that activism doesn't always require a megaphone. It can start with a single post, a single story, or a bold truth told online through your insights. And we have seen how digital feminism and social media can become tool for combating gender-based violence and creating the world that's safer, more just, and more inclusive. To all our attendees, thank you for showing up with open minds and hearts. Let's carry today's wisdom into our online space and daily lives. Be brave, be vocal, and most importantly, be intentional. This is your moderator, Sahito, signing off with a deep gratitude. Stay bold, stay connected, and stay rising with Women Ascension. Thank you so much again, Miss Eileen.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated all the questions and having this conversation with you all today.
Thank you so much, Miss Ellen, for giving your time to us and having this important topic with our participants. And we will catch you soon. I will catch you for slides, and I will share your slides with them, and also your LinkedIn account. They can connect with you there. So thank you so much, Miss Ellen.
Perfect. Thank you so much.